Hello, everyone. Welcome to PublishDrive Author Hour. I'm Danica Favorite, and today we are talking about one of the biggest questions authors have. How do you move from book sales to sustainable author income? My guest today is Jill Cooper of The Writing Wives, and she has built, managed, and taught inside a publishing business that has reached extraordinary levels of success. But what I love about Jill is she's very honest, she's very open, and very practical in how she approaches everything. And so the reason I invited Jill today, other than the fact that she is a successful business person who has done so much with her business as part of the Writing Wives and working with her wife, Mallory Cooper, and building this business, is that she's posted something on Substack the other day, and I'm going to post it here in the comments, and then later for those watching the replay, if you don't see the comments, I will add this to the show notes. But she posted on Substack about how she built this publishing empire and burned it to the ground and then created something new and started over. And I really loved what she learned from that experience and how she has grown and built and adapted with the times. And so I really loved reading that post. And as soon as I read it, I was like, Jill, please come on and talk about this, because this is amazing. And so we're going to talk about what authors can learn from Jill's experience, whether you're just starting out or building a series, reviving a backlist, or just even trying to create a more stable income from a book you've already written. So let's open with just this, is that, your post is, like I said, it is one of the most impactful things I have read in a long time about the publishing industry and what it looks like to create a profitable author business. And so you shared your big wins, your huge revenue months. I mean, 2.8 million is nothing to sneeze at over a lifetime of publishing career. But you also talked about the very real burnout and what happens when you create this machine that's not sustainable. And I know that you are now working really hard at creating that sustainable business. So for authors who are listening or watching, who want to be profitable, what do you want them to most understand from what you shared in that Substack post? Let's just start there.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between being like a creative writer and then to shift to being a publishing machine, where everything is about systems and processes. And I think to get from point A to point B, you do have to necessarily build the business like through instinct, but then realize later you're going to need to burn it down and start over. Because you can't build it perfect the first time, because you don't know how it's going to work and you don't know how it's going to feel. So if you get to the point where you're like, this isn't working for me anymore, you don't have to keep doing the same thing. You can just stop and redo it. And I think the big point I think I would make is to get paid more than one way from what you write, where I call writing a book it's an asset. So a product was kind of both. So if you're working on making an asset, how many ways can you get paid for the same asset so you don't burn yourself out? So you don't have to write 48 books in 1 year, which is what we did in 2018. And I think also people should recognize that, well, maybe, you read my Substack, you're like, well, I don't want to do that. That sounds horrible. I don't want to be a machine. And then you realize, okay, I'm not going to be a machine. So maybe I need to scale back how much I want to make and how much I want to dominate my genre to be happy and to live a life, excuse me, that you want to live. I had a business coach in 2022, 2023, that was always like, get to 7 figures, make yourself an agency, hire all these people. So that's what we started doing. And then I realized I don't really like being responsible for 4 to 6 people's income. And now I have to sell things just to support paying my team. And it's very stressful. So I decided, we're not going to do that anymore. Mal and I talked about it. We decided we're going to scale back and go back to a small team. And that's just where we're happier and as a small business than a 7-figure business year to year.
Yeah. I think that's really important, is figuring out what sustainability looks like. And to your point about where is your comfort level of, I love that thought process behind what having a team to support you looks like, because I do think that for a lot of authors, that dream is, okay, I will build my business to a certain point and then I can just hire people to do that for me. And I like how you talk about the pressure of what that also looks like. So
I think, there's the perfect day exercise where you imagine, like, what is my perfect day? And you close your eyes and you feel it, or you write it down, and so you can feel the emotions. And sometimes I have to like look at what I'm doing and saying, like, is this in line with the perfect day I wrote down? Which is like, have coffee with Mel, we're going to relax, we're going to like do all these things. Is the high pressure stuff really factor into what I want to build for me? And it's not necessarily, my perfect day isn't going to match yours or some other authors, and some authors may never want to hire anyone. And that's fine. But then you do need to look at the pros and cons of burnout and stretching yourself too thin, wearing yourself out. And for people that don't want to hire people, I would say you need to bake in recurring revenue, whether that's through Patreon or a membership. You get more revenue by, say, running omnibus sales, audio translations. Like, just try to get more money, so you can basically don't have to jump from new release to new release every month or a couple times a month, because the system works until it doesn't. Until like I write about in the Substack that at the beginning, Mel's writing 10,000 words before lunch. And then fast forward, Mel spending 12 hours a day just to get 1,000, and still is like really struggling all day. And suddenly when you have 20 pre-orders and you have to cancel one, they all fall. And that's
right,
just
right.
And then not only are you, I'm going to say failing, but I don't really mean failing, but in your head, you are failing miserably. And then you're demoralized. And then you start to wonder, can I even write again? Or for me personally, when I would think about, well, I should write something, feeling physically ill, like I do not want to write. I'm sick, like I just need a break. And I spent about, I'm going to say 3 years, I didn't write anything, like, because I forced myself to write when I felt sick, like physically ill, having to be creative. I just kept pushing myself through it and pushing. And then the consequence was now I need to take like 4 years off, and I can't do the thing that I used to love, that I would get up in the morning excited to write something, when you just burn out that creativity. You got to feed the well. You got to write things for you and find out ways to write things you love that are also designed to make money. And I feel like there is a cross section. Online, you will see people say, well, you can't write for love and money at the same time. And I say that's not true. But you do need to protect that energy in that space.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you said that, because I think that's been really empowering for me, is knowing that part about your story and being part of your story. Because as you know, and as I've mentioned in different places like the Brave New Bookshelf podcast and things like that, like I did go through this period of not writing that I'm just finally coming out of. And it is that same thing of forcing yourself to write when you don't want to, when you don't feel well, when you've got all this other stuff going on in your life, and that takes a toll on you. And so
you had a major life change. It was very emotional and very draining. So obviously you can't do it like you used to, because your energy for creativity is being sapped by some traumatic experience.
Right.
And for me, and a lot of that was tied up into Mel's transition. Even though you're fine, we stayed together, we're in love. There was a period of transition for me too. I was focused on other things and I couldn't be creative at the same time, though I forced myself to be, and that was a mistake.
Right. And that's what I really appreciate about you talking about having sustainable systems, is because what you mentioned in your post is that what kept you guys going financially and helped your business is that you did have a system for that. And the system is what kept your business running. And so I would love to hear some tips and ideas on what authors can do to create that sustainable business for themselves.
Sure. I mean, it does help if you have a back catalog. How much money you can pull from it on any given month. The more books you have, the easier it is. But even if you don't have a lot, like say you just have a couple series, you can release omnibuses when income starts to dip. So then omnibuses convert really well on Facebook ads, because usually an omnibus is more expensive than one book. And if it's in KU, it gets a lot of reads. So you can just basically, it's almost like printing money sometimes with an omnibus, because you've already written the books. You just put them together in a new package and a new file, and now you're selling it twice. And you're reaching new readers, because there's some readers out there that just love an omnibus. You design the cover in a different direction than your first series to grab people that maybe weren't attracted to that cover style. So if you did, like, say, if you're doing romance, you've got lots of hot guys on a cover. For an omnibus, you might go object cover, because that's going to attract that reader that likes that sort of thing and isn't like attracted to man chest. Other things you can do, we did a structured spreadsheet. So if Mal is releasing a new book in, say, Series B, the book 1 in Series B goes on sale before the book releases. And that's how we basically would stagger all our monthly promos. We did about 4 promos a month, 2 newsletters a week, and one would be to push the new release, and the second one would be to push the sale promo, and do, we do like 2 newsletter swaps per email. We don't overload our newsletter swaps. Back in the day, Mal would need to approve the newsletter swaps ahead of time and read the book, and she did loosen the standards a little bit as we got going, and things were getting a little more intense. We were getting lots of emails from authors that wanted to be featured, and so then as long as it was like genre specific and trope, and it was the right type of sci-fi, like not dystopian but spaceships, we would look at swapping with people. We do not have like your list needs to be this big sort of mentality. We're open to all authors. Authors would be like, well, I only have like 10 subscribers, and I'd be like, well, one day you will have more, and so I like goodwill, and I like to spread it.
I like that philosophy, because I do think a lot of beginning authors are out there saying, okay, that's great that we're talking about MD Cooper, and so she has a huge list. I don't want to ask her to do a newsletter swap with me. And so I like that idea of, even if you're someone who maybe you only do have that one book out and you only have a very small list, this is how you grow your list, is by talking to a more successful author and just asking. And again, this is something I've really learned a lot from you, is it never hurts to ask. And
True.
And I love that about you, because you're always like, you know what, just ask, just try it. And that innovation and that spirit of, you never know unless you try.
Plus, sometimes you find people will have really big lists, but their open rates aren't great, or their conversions aren't great. And sometimes people have a really small but engaged, dedicated list, and they're actually selling better from their list, even though it's not huge. Of course, the mentality is to cast a wide net and catch as many as you can. But for some people, it just that's not what they want to do. It's not how it works for them. And that's fine too. So you don't really know these things. So I just prefer, as long as the book aligns with what our readers like, and the author aligns, was writing the same type of stuff we do, we're pretty much open to anything. And I always feel like don't shoot yourself in the foot, because the person you're turning away today could be the New York Times bestseller tomorrow, and you may need them. Like when your income starts falling and you want to get the word out, now there may be people out there that don't want to swap with you because it's gotten out that you were maybe a little rude or just not super inclusive. So
that is a good point.
Yeah,
I think you and I have both been in the publishing industry long enough that we've seen people's careers kind of rise and fall, and you just never know that, that person that you sent off a snippy email to yesterday, 10 years from now is going to be like the biggest author ever, and they remember that interaction. So goodwill is so important.
You can feel it. You can feel the author's drive. They're handling it more like a business, from even when they're like itty bitty, and you think this person probably has the chops, but even that can be wrong. So I just prefer just to be kind to authors that email and reach out to me, and if it works, it works. And that's my base, I guess, philosophy. And also, have a larger income, you basically should just stack it like building blocks, and you just continue the process. You release the book, you finish the series, release the omnibus, audio, translations, rinse, repeat. You just keep going. It isn't really, for most people, it's not built in a day or a month. Every once in a while, like what happened with Mal is that, when book 3 came out, suddenly everyone discovered her all at once. So the income shot up quickly because they're consuming everything she had done at that point, which was like 3 books in an omnibus. And that's when she decided, she's like, I'm not sure how long this can last, like how we can sustain this, but I'm going to write as many books as I can for the first couple of years because I want my catalog to rival Star Trek's catalog. And, at that, she basically said, can I do it? Can I quit my job? She's down on her hands and knees. Like she's like asking me to marry her again for this. And I did not want to say yes. I wanted to say, no, you cannot quit your day job. That's what I wanted to say, but I didn't. I said, okay, we'll do it. And that meant sacrifice. That meant pulling everything out of our 401k. It meant selling our stocks that were worth like $80,000, but the company she worked with at the time, and just figuring it out from the ground up. Because suddenly we had to pay for health insurance and all this other stuff that goes into it. And and we became sort of business partners again. Wasn't the time, but this was the first time really in like a fiction publishing house of our own, and started taking on co-authors and organizing so much stuff that we had no experience with. So we just basically cast ourselves into the fire, and we're like, we'll have to figure it out. Our daughter was 5, so there was a lot on the line.
Yeah. So for someone who's just starting out and is in that beginning baby author stage, what are some systems that you would recommend they set up now that you wish you had, or let's just pretend you're starting over right now? What would you set up to make sure that this is sustainable?
Still?
Yeah.
I mean, first I'd be grateful for the day job, and realize that the day job gives you a lot. It maybe doesn't give you a lot of free time, but it gives you a lot of other things. It gives you money. It gives you consistent income that you can then take that money and help, put into your business and save up. So when you decide like, yes, I am going to go full time, that you have a safety net and a nest egg. So, you don't need to freak out if sales get bumped down. And for systems, I probably, I would set up a writing schedule or a business schedule. It doesn't necessarily have to be writing, so that when you do go full time, you already know, like if you write better in the morning or the afternoon. Mel had a bit of a period where she just sort of floundered because she's like, oh, I have all day. And then some days wouldn't write. And then, so it really helps to have guardrails and know yourself, know what makes you work best, like what works optimally for yourself. And then promo schedules, like I'd make sure I'm booking newsletter swaps and promos with different companies every month. Or maybe every 3 months if as you're building your catalog. But once you have like 60 to 120 books every week, you should be promoting something. It should be strategic to align with whatever you're releasing next. Excuse me. And my biggest would be always grow your audience. So always have a new reader magnet going for whatever new series you're writing, and throw a $5 Facebook ad at it. I always suggest that you are always running an ad to your reader magnet, and you're dropping brand new people into a warm email sequence that they can learn about you, feel your passion, love your characters like you love them. And then so basically they're hungry when as soon as you have a new release, you email them and say, hey, I got a new book. They're hungry to get it.
Yeah, I really like that. And I love your reader magnet strategy. And obviously you and I talk about that a lot offline. So I would love to have you share with the people watching talk more about this reader magnet strategy, because I think it's a really good one.
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of times as authors, we like to cut corners a little bit. So we're like, well, I'll just take this deleted scene or this epilogue and turn it into a reader magnet. And that works for your existing fans, does not work for a cold audience. A cold audience, what you really need to show them is you can write a full act structure with the begin, middle, and end with the climax. And you can do that in as little words as you can pull that off. For me, it's somewhere between 10 and 16K. In romance, you definitely can do it. And you want to, show them your world, show them how you write, bake in the tropes that you're planning to go with for that series, and make it feel like a self-contained little story that leads to the say book 1. If it's a romance, you could just, and if it's say every book is like a happy ever after, you just bring in a new couple that you haven't written about before. They can maybe show some of the supporting characters that are going to be in there later. Throw it on BookFunnel is always our recommendation. Of course, you could use Story Origin. I throw it on BookFunnel, throw an ad together with a really nice photo, a great blurb, like universal fantasy butter blurb filled with all the tropey feels you're looking for. And then when I sell that, when I sell the reader magnet on my Facebook ad, I don't mention that it's free or that, it's a novella. I just let the story sell itself with their character, emotion, and plot. Because if you say free, you're just going to really get the freebie seekers. If you just let people go, oh, this story sounds really good, and I really like it, let me buy it, and they get there and they realize, oh, it's free, then that's great. And your warm email sequence can start to prepare their expectations that eventually you are going to offer them books for sale or in KU. And that's basically how I keep my click rate pretty high, which is between 45 and 60%, depending on the list. And I'm pretty happy with that. And I built a Kickstarter list that way to about 7,000 people. I built a sweet romance list from 0 to 4,000 in I think it was about 6 weeks. And you just keep churning. You just keep the machine going. People unsubscribe. That's fine. I know they got the free novella, but it's okay. Just let it go. That's just part of business, is that you're going to get a wide net of people, and not all of them are going to want to buy from you, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. And I really like the tip about not calling it out as a free book, because you're right. If people are just looking for free books, you're going to hit the freebie seekers, not people who are willing to pay money for your work. So that's a really great point of making sure that you're signaling the value of your work from day one. And the other thing that I wanted to ask about is, you were talking earlier about how you just run a $5 ad to this reader magnet. And I know that you and Mal with the Writing Wives do a lot of really wonderful ad classes and teaching people about ads. So what do you use as a metric for these $5 ads for a free product as something that you're like, yes, this is really bringing in the readers, and this is how I'm growing my reader list?
Well, the standard for like a lead, someone's email address, like not for our industry, but like sort of everywhere, is like $1.50 would be considered good. For authors, we usually want it to be under 35 cents. But I'll generally go as high as 75 to $1, because it's still, especially if it's for a Kickstarter, because if they convert, they're going to be buying a large package. When I start my reader magnet, the click rate is usually about 10 cents, maybe 5, and I start there. And so I'll check on it like every couple weeks to see how it's doing. And I do check the signups to make sure that like it's still getting, like, say, 5 to 10 signups a day. I don't usually stay at $5 a day, but I think it's reasonable. You can. It'll just take longer. Sometimes if I'm getting close to release date or the Kickstarter is going to launch, I will throttle it to $30 a day for a little bit. I do make sure it's still, maybe I'm getting 20, 30 emails a day at that point. And then I'll drop it down when I feel like, okay, I think I spent enough money, or I think I have enough. And then I'll wait. Once it hits like 75 cents, I probably will kill the ad, remake the ad, sometimes exactly the same, and it will start basically all over again. Sometimes I'll refresh the creative, like the images. I don't usually change the blurb or the headlines on those ads, because usually they're pretty self-sustaining. I just let them go and do their thing, and I don't micromanage my ads too much. I'm a viber, so I don't. I check like, oh, how much is it costing me? Like, oh, okay, and then I'm done.
Nice. And so for someone who is just, like starting out, like, or even people who are established authors, at what point do you think that an investment in ads is worth that investment? Is that something that you think people should do with that right when they have their first book, or how many books should they have out before you would recommend them starting looking at running some ads?
For reader magnet, I'd say start as soon as you can. Even if you don't have like the book quite ready to come out yet, you can start build. Like that's what usually I would do for new pen name, is just start building the base. And then, a warm sequence, and you tell them like, oh, here's my town, here's my characters, here's why I decided to write it, here's the songs I listened to, and ask them questions like, what's your favorite song, what's your favorite, if you wrote fantasy, like, what's your favorite fantasy movie, what are you currently watching on Netflix? People love to answer those questions, and especially if you reply back, they feel seen, and they want connection with people, especially creatives, I think. When it comes to like running traffic ads, I usually or sales ads, I usually wait until there's at least a book 3 pre-order. They'll convert better once book 3 is actually out. But if you feel like I need to practice to get better, I would start usually around book 2 first, but don't spend a lot of money on it, and don't get upset if you're not making a lot of money. However, if your risk tolerance to losing money is extremely low, I would wait till book 3 and 4. Like, if you're going to lose sleep because your ads aren't making you back what you put into them, don't do them. It doesn't matter what anyone else says. Like, you have to look at your own life and decide, I'm not tolerant to losing money. I need to make money. Then just wait a little bit longer, take a class. If you take a class, they'll digest what you've learned before taking another class. Like, learn how to practically apply what you learn. Because I know some of us love to take courses, but you should pause between courses just to be like, okay, now how does this going to change my process? It doesn't have to change your whole process. So you can just pick and choose, like, oh, this nugget was really good, and this one over here was really good. Now I'm going to put them together and figure out, like, what does my process look like? Which, shouldn't look like mine or Mal's all the time, because we're all different people. And that's basically, I think, how I do it.
Yeah. I think that's also really important for people to recognize. And you've said this a couple of different times where, in terms of Mal going full time, like, what did her process as an author look like when she had all day? And so for authors, before they decide to quit the day job and all of that, to really think about, what is my process? When am I most creative? How do I maximize these things? And how do I have this in place? And then looking at, okay, what is my financial risk for running ads? Some people, that $5 a day ad, they may not be ready to spend that money. That's too much of a risk for them. So think about what your own risk profile is. And then when you get later in the process and you have more money to spend, how can you then maximize that spend? And one of the other things I wanted to ask about is, because you talked about just now with the ads and everything, that third book in the series. So what is so meaningful about that third book? It seems like book 3 is kind of a magic number. So
I feel like every 3, like, if you're writing in one series or one universe, every 3 books is magical. And it just basically has to do with read through. That, no book, generally no book is going to be profitable on the book you're advertising. He's going to require the book 2 and the book 3 to raise your read through and raise your profit. So if you have a long series, like say you write cozy mysteries, you write 20 books in a series, like that one, unless your read through is really dismal, like you're almost guaranteed that you're going to make at least a decent profit, because there's so much read through. So for authors that when they start running ads, a lot of them just look at the book 1. They don't look at book 2 and book 3. They're not sure exactly what read through is. And so then, that's when I tell them they need to basically step back and look at, well, after book 1, what are the readers doing? And if you don't have a book 2, they're not doing anything. So it's best to wait until you have somewhere else for them to go. I usually compare it to basically being in checkout at the grocery store while you're standing there and there's the rack of gum and candy. You wouldn't grab the gum and candy if you weren't standing there. So I usually call it a spontaneous purchase. That's why you want to pre-order in the back of, say, book 2 and 3 and 4, leading into all the next books, because you want people to be excited when they read the book and click pre-order before they go away. Because there's a lot of authors and most readers read a lot of authors and they may forget that they love you. And so, but if they get that notification, like, oh, I pre-ordered their next book, I totally forgot. And then they start reading it. So that is, I like to just catch that spontaneous sale. And if you're going to promo something, make sure there's somewhere for them to go. And if it's not financial, you can at least have a link to your reader magnet in the back of the book, so you can get their email address, so you can market to them later and remind them about why they love you so much.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point. And that's where I think for the authors who are out there trying to be successful is recognizing how important read through actually is, and where are those readers coming? Where are you sending those readers? All of that. And then after that, what I think is also a really great strategy that you use a lot is your omnibus strategy. And so let's hear more about the power of having an omnibus for authors.
Sure. I mean, one of the great things is you can now get paid a second time for something you're already getting paid for. You wrote it, so you should try to get paid as many times as you can from single content. So sometimes it's like squeezing a stone and getting more money out of it, but sometimes it's extremely profitable. With the omnibus, we usually would, we write all our series in 3 arc chunks. So a series may be 6 books or might be 9 books or just 3. But we'll just imagine that we're doing, let's say, a 6-book series. After book 3 releases, we watch the sale tail start to come down. And then once it starts to plateau and level off, that signals it's time to release omnibus book 1 to 3. But you should have book 4 on pre-order already. Then you package it up, give it a title that's very tropey, and great cover that, again, should not be the same cover to style as the main series. You want to attract new readers, because there are readers out there that just like to binge omnibuses. So the book 1 to 3 omnibus comes out, and while that's out and it's making money on the charts, we have to have one omnibus that has made us over like $200,000 at this point, all by itself, which is great. It's just out there. It's like free money, basically. And then you write books 4 to 6. And then you watch that 6 tail. Okay, the 6 tail. It's leveling off. That's when you release omnibus 4 through 6. Same basic principles. Is we create a series just for the omnibuses. So when they finish omnibus 1, Amazon will say, "Do you want to buy omnibus 2?" And they click the button like, yes, check, like read in KU or to buy it. And then we watch that tail. And then at this point, we treat every omnibus as a major release, right? There's a contest. There's a big to do. There's newsletter swaps out the OneSue. There's like 20 of them. It's insane. And then you watch the tail on the omnibus 4 through 6. And when it starts to dwindle and it's flatlining, that's when I release omnibus, the complete series, books 1 through 6. And now they're all out there and they're all doing their job. And the fascinating thing I always find is when I release omnibus, the complete series, the other 2 omnibuses lift in the rank and they start getting borrowed and more money, even though I've just released the complete series. Like, you could just buy that one, but some people choose not to. They choose to buy them in pieces. And then that's when you start use those as your promo tools. You promo them as often as it makes sense. At least, a couple times a year. You get a BookBub tends to love omnibuses. So then you try to get as many BookBubs too as you can from these. And I've gotten omnibus BookBubs with no reviews at all that did fantastic on BookBub. And this is back in the day where you could have like a BookBub tail for like 6 months and you just sort of riding high. And it's great. And it's a tactic that works. I feel like, I see the question a lot, like, is an omnibus worth it? And I'm like, yes. It's worth it. It's so worth it. Like, why wouldn't you want to get paid more than once for something, you wrote, put your heart into? So that's our basic strategy. And all the strategies I've talked about, they've been working for years and they'll probably continue working for years, even though the tech changes, AI changes things, but the strategies themselves, they still work, and they're still the backbone of publishing.
I think that's really good for you to point out, because so many people look at people who had success, 2018, the way you and Mal did, and are like, yeah, but the publishing industry has changed. And yet it has changed. And yet these backbones of the publishing industry and things like omnibuses and these strategies are still working really well for you and have given you a sustainable income. So what kind of pricing strategies do you use with the omnibuses?
Well, since our omnibuses all come in KU, my strategy is to try to get reads. So the price doesn't necessarily matter. So I will usually launch an omnibus at 99 cents just to get it to rank a little high. true, it will then sort of at 99 cents, it does cannibalize your reads a little bit, because some people will be like, well, I'm just going to buy it for 99 cents instead of reading it, because then I get to keep it forever. So then, once it hits like pretty high, you get like a bestseller tag or something like that, then I would push it to $2.99, and then I basically watch the sales as they're climbing. Then high, then it's, now it's $4.99, and then it might be level off a little bit, but then climb again, and then now it's $6.99. And before every increase, I send a newsletter being like, grab it before the price goes up to $4.99 on Friday, or last chance, grab it for $6.99 before it goes up to $9.99. And usually $9.99 is where we don't go higher than that. We tried at the 35% royalty, and because I know some authors say it works really well, but for us, it was just cannibalizing our money. So we just were like, no, that's a bad idea, and we put it back. Still, though, you should experiment, but just if you notice it's not working, fix it. Don't be like, well, maybe I should give it. No, I'm just going to fix it now.
Yeah. I've noticed one of the things that you do as an author and running the business is that you are very quick to pivot. Like when something's not working, you're not like, okay, well, let's just give it a little more time. You're like, nope, done, change it. And even, especially when you teach about ads and things like that, it's like, okay, I see people ask all the time, well, when do I give up on this ad? And it's so funny because half the time you're like, oh yeah, I've already done a new ad, because like, if it's not working, it's not working. And so right. It's really, really good for people to understand that you don't have to just wait and see. You can continually pivot, because it's that continually pivot that's going to give you that data.
Yeah, I think, with time, it gets easier, but I think all business people should try to trust their intuition and learn to make decisions quick. You don't have to rule your business by committee or angry mob or your favorite Facebook group. Like if this isn't working, just make the choice. Other people don't have to approve of your decisions. Like it's your business, make decisions for yourself. It's okay to get a general feel for what people did that worked for them, but ultimately it's still your choice. And the faster you can make decisions, the faster you could fail, and the faster you can pivot and find the thing that works. Mal is a software engineer by trade. She always says, fail often and fail fast. You want to fail as quickly as possible, so you realize okay, you know what, this isn't working. Now I need to find something that is going to work. And that's pretty much how we have been running our lives for a long time, maybe since the beginning when we first got married in 97, but especially with the writing career, you have to, you just have to sort of sense the wind is changed and just not be afraid to pivot. But then also at the same time, you also don't want to give up too fast. You don't want to abandon Facebook ads completely. You don't want to abandon the series at book 2, because book 3 might be the one where it takes off. So it is, I feel like it is a balance between data and gut. I'm more gut and Mal is more data.
That's why it's probably the perfect partnership, is that balance of data and gut. And
sometimes we butt heads when she's like, well, you didn't center your text on your image for your ad. And I'm like, and then she just you see her shaking when I say stuff like that. It doesn't matter, because it feels the way that I need the reader to feel, and that's what, for me, that is what it's important, because I'm more of a emotional creature than not that she's not emotional, but she comes at things with logic and analytics, and I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't feel right, so I changed it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're not afraid to fail. Part of your business plan is allowing for failure and being okay with failure, because that is how you get the data. That is how you learn and figure out what works. And because I know among all of those successful books, you've also probably had quite a few books bomb and just do terribly.
Oh, yes, especially under my name, especially, because I don't write in a regular person. I mash genres a lot, and a lot of people don't get what I'm trying to do. And I certainly did have lived with failure and then feeling like I can't pick myself back up. I can't do this. So it has been a journey. The first book Mal and I co-authored, I was horrible. Mal had never had a co-author before. I was the first one. So I was the experiment, because we're married. We figured we'll get to keep all the money. So yay. And I had this recurring nightmare. I'd wake up and my book had a 1-star reviews and said, this author is no MD Cooper. And then that was what actually happened. The first review on my first co-authored book with Mal, I was a 1-star, and it said, this is not an MD Cooper book. It's like horrible. And I got into bed beside Val and I pulled the covers over my head and I didn't want to get out of bed ever again. Like, fast forward, Mal learned things about how to mesh our voices together and how to change, be a little more ruthless with what I submit to make it more her and match our styles, which is something she had never had to do before. And by the end of Perilous Alliance 7, like, now it's one of the series that has the highest read through in her catalog for co-authors, and people always come back to Mr. Fizzlepop and all these things that I never would have gotten to experience that if I had just given up after that first book. But I had to feel it. I had to feel like a failure. I felt like I missed the mark. Mal, was like, it's my fault. I should have done a better job. And we were both like, we're like finding a way forward, where we switched from being married to business partners. We have to have these conversations. And I think she did end up re-editing it and going over it again and fixing things that we should probably have done the first time. But I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And once you know, then you can do a better job.
Yeah, for sure. And as you know, Mr. Fizzlepop is my favorite character in the world. MFP forever.
Forever.
And so it does just go to show that just because something doesn't work the first time doesn't mean that you can't adjust and change, and it ends up being something really, really cool. Because I know you have told me that you will be working on a Kickstarter later in the year featuring my beloved Mr. Fizzlepop.
I mean, yes, I have the plushie. He's on my shelf. It says MFP. He's the grouchiest looking cat. I guess I would say, don't be afraid to fail. And like, when you fail, you feel like the entire world knows. Like, the lady at the grocery store knows you made this huge mistake and you fumbled something really big. But most people don't notice that you did that. My trauma therapist from a few years ago would always say, you're a mango and everyone's at the store making banana bread. Do you think they care about you right now? And I'd be like, no. She's like, that's because and I'd be like, I'm a mango. And they're looking for bananas. So I sometimes tell myself that, like, if I'm doing something I'm uncomfortable with, like, you're a mango. You're a mango.
I love this story because mango is my favorite fruit. And so now every time I see you, I'm going to be like, she's a mango. So that's fantastic. And so one of my favorite questions from your post is, what else can this IP do? So how should authors start thinking about moving beyond a single ebook sale? I know you and I just had this lovely conversation about my beloved MFP. First of all, why don't I have an MFP plushie? I should have done this. So yesterday she has merch, and there is an MFP coffee mug. I was drinking my coffee yesterday out of the MFP coffee mug. I should have remembered to save it for today. So obviously you have all kinds of cool things that you do with this IP. What are some ideas that maybe are simple and easy for authors to think about that they can use?
I mean, me personally, I love to make random art and random merchandise. So it's, it sort of feels like scratches an itch to make something new. I think it's important to think past bookmarks and postcards. I mean, those are great, but you should, try to think about things that are a little bigger, like, plushies of your favorite characters. I'd like sometimes just browse through Kickstarter and see, like, what are authors doing? I like things that have high ROI. So if it's like a super fancy necklace or something, I'm like, I don't think the ROI is high enough for something like that, because it's going to be expensive, but I'm not keeping most of it. So things like, you can get plushies. You can find great printers, or I don't know if that's the right word, in China, in places for getting things. Ask your audience, like, what would they like? Do they, want the little book charm on, so they can leave it around their house or put it on their keychain? Those are very popular. And you can go to Etsy and just type in book, and you can just see like what are creators doing on Etsy. Because if they're doing on Etsy, that there's a market for it. There's creators making it, especially if you see they have a lot of high star reviews. Like if they have 200, 600 reviews, you know, oh, people are really hot for this thing and go that way. I think also you have to recognize opportunity when you see it. So if you see, you know, like say a board game company or like a Dungeons and Dragons type company looking for IP to make a new book, make a new tabletop game, like throw your hat in the ring. If you see an app for romances, you know, and you think, oh, I think my romance would like convert really well to a platform like that, just toss your hat in the ring. Don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to get rejected, because you know sometimes it just doesn't work. You can just end the conversation amicably. Things change later. I just recently sold my time trap film rights to an AI studio just for AI film rights. So it's possible if the AI film did really well, I could then pivot and be like, okay, well, I'm going to take this to AI or not AI, sorry, film right agent or Netflix, or, you know, contact a screenwriter or something like that. And I feel like we can use AI to open doors, whether authors agree with me on that or not. It doesn't affect my business.
Yeah. And I love that statement right there. Whether other authors agree with me or not, it doesn't affect my business. And so this goes back to the point you've been making this whole time, is what is best for your personal business, because ultimately you have to make the decision of what is sustainable for you, what is sustainable for your business. And so as authors are looking at these additional revenue streams, what do you think is one of the most overlooked revenue streams that you're like, why aren't authors doing more of this?
That's a good question. I think probably merging their creative works with tech, like apps, maybe even, you know, things like comic books, graphic novels. Obviously, some things are not going to work as a graphic novel or a comic book, but a lot of things do. A lot of genres do. Even I know an author that writes like basically paranormal women's fiction. That her graphic novel is coming out on Kickstarter later this year. Like, and I also write somewhat in that genre, and I would have thought that I should go that direction. And she's very excited, and I'm excited to see how it goes. And I feel like, you know, if you see a test case and it did really well, and you think, well, that test case kind of applies to me, you should jump on it, as long as you have the spoons to do so. And sometimes you just like, I'm already overwhelmed. I can't do a Kickstarter, and that's okay. You don't have to. But I think you should at least be open to different possibilities and be ready to pivot if it makes sense.
Yeah, I think that is a really great piece that people need to understand, is there are so many opportunities, and figuring out what you have the spoons for, what you can actually do. And so, and I'm asking this question to somebody that I know has a million different things on the go all at once and is constantly pivoting and doing things. So how do authors, when they see all these different opportunities in publishing, how do they decide what's right for them? And then kind of a follow-up to that, because I think you'll include this in your answer, is this idea of when do they look at all these opportunities and just be like, okay, nope, I need to kind of step back and not do all the things and choose like which of all of those things is going to be best for them.
For me, I think in a lot of cases it's just a gut feeling. Like if I'm excited about something and I think about it more than once, and I keep coming back to it, then that's the thing I want to do. And sometimes it might take me a while. Like when I did my Kickstarter, I pieced it together a little bit at a time for, I don't even know, 3 months, 6 months. I'm not really sure. Like I knew I was going to do it. I just didn't know when I was going to do it. And just sitting down to do it was super overwhelming. So I just took it a piece at a time. And anytime I would start to get overwhelmed, I'd just stop and do something else. So I think we don't need to necessarily rush to the finish line. We can just do it at our own time and just tell ourselves, like, I'm doing it when I'm supposed to be doing it. If I'm not doing it, next month, that's okay. I'll do it when I'm meant to do it. And as long as you pick away at the list, you will get there.
Yeah.
So for me, that's basically how I take it. And if I get excited about a certain tech, or maybe, like some people might like, well, I always wanted a board game, or I want a card game, or I want, make magic cards based on my characters, then if it fulfills a dream, I think you should do it. I wouldn't necessarily like completely upend my publishing schedule if I had pre-orders, in line. I might get through that book I'm currently writing before I decide to do something else, but I would write it down. I'd make like, just a bullet list maybe, or just even a quick voice note, like, revisit this idea. And if I keep thinking about it in like say a couple of weeks in a month, and it's like, okay, maybe I need to move this up in my production schedule to really look into this. And then spend, book time in your calendar to research it, or to talk to someone about it, or post about it in a group. Like, have you ever done this before? What would you recommend? And then just build it out that way. And I build everything in Word documents. So that's how I tackle things.
Yeah. And I think that's really great to give yourself that permission to take your time, because most of these opportunities, they're not like a once in a lifetime. Oh my goodness, if I don't do this right now, my opportunity has passed. And there's still plenty of opportunity in publishing. And so I think that's a really good reminder to end our conversation with. But before we end, I want to give you the opportunity to let people know where to find you, let them know about your school community and the different levels and things like that, as well as any other projects you have going that people might be interested in, because you do a lot. And I know you have a lot of resources for authors, many of which are actually free. And so why don't you share about those?
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, you can find us at thewritingwives.com for general information about everything we're always doing. I'm also on Substack, which is mostly just mine, where I write about publishing or whatever is currently on my mind. And all that is free. People can subscribe and pay, but all of my articles are for free subscribers. And that is thewritingwives.substack.com, obviously. And our school community is school.com/thewritingwives, where we teach. Facebook ads is what gets people in, but we also talk about branding, positioning, IP, legacy, and how you can leave all this to your kids and maybe, give them a generational legacy to carry on. It's an exciting time. We like to explore different ideas and how can we use tech to make things easier. Authors wear a lot of hats. We don't have to do it the hard way just because we always did it the hard way. You can release that and realize that art, creativity, and tech can all work together. It doesn't make you less of a writer. It doesn't make you less of an artist to want to make money and find ways to merge the two. I learned how to merge the two in 1999. I took a course that taught me, like, this is how you do that. This is how you find things you love and interject them into anything you're writing. Even if you are writing it for the purpose of making money, you can still love it. And I just found out that author passed away recently. It made me very sad, because she was a gift to anyone that wanted to be an indie back in the 1990s. So I'll probably be posting about some of her methods that I learned along the way for craft, and how to make stories that readers don't want to put down, and how the tricks and stuff she basically baked into her basic writing prompt skills.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Who is the author?
Her name is Holly Islail. It was called, the main course I took of hers, because she has many, was How to Think Sideways. And that pretty much unlocked everything in me, like for me, and how to write genres together that don't necessarily belong together, and how to do it and bake in those things that you love about anything, really. Like, in how she would just make a note of something and drop it to a box, and later she'd go through all her box of notes and be like, oh, all these work together. This is the piece I was missing. And it was just like a really great way of brainstorming completely offline. Like, I had poster board on the floor, and it was just a great experience.
Oh, that sounds really nice. That sounds nice. I'm actually gonna look for that myself, and I can't wait until you post about that on Substack. And now I'll probably be bugging you until that post comes up, because
I can send her website still exists. Her children are still selling her courses, so I think that's great.
Yeah, that is great. And that goes back to what you were just saying about leaving that legacy. She's passed away, but her legacy lives on and her children still are able to do something with that IP, which.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is that my username and password from like 1999, 2001 still work in the forum. It hasn't changed at all. Like it blew my mind.
That's really amazing. That is super amazing. I love that so much. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming today. I loved having this conversation with you. I am sure you will come back and chat with our audience again. So for those of you listening to the replay, if you have any questions or any topics that you want us to revisit, just let us know, because we really are, my goal for these YouTube lives really is to help authors find ways of becoming profitable. And how can you extend your profit and do it, as we were talking with Jill, in a sustainable way. So thank you for being here, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you. Bye.